So what I want to share with you today is the Myer Briggs indicator type as it relates to fitness, as it relates to running, and just on a day-to-day lifestyle management. So Myer Briggs indicator type came out many years ago, and research that came out was talking about the base personality that someone may have. There has been additional research and different thoughts on all personality theories in more recent times, but I wanted to focus on the Myer Briggs indicator type, specifically because it provides a good base and understanding of who you are, kind of where your comfort zone is, and how you break out of your comfort zone. So what is too much? Everyone says, okay, you got to break out of your comfort zone, but what is actually too much? So all of those questions are things that we want to answer today. So to start off, the Myer Briggs indicator types have 8 different personality traits. There are 4 sets of traits, so each one has a pair. We're going to go through each and every pair and how it relates to how we're going to be interacting with our environment. So the first pair is something that most people know about, and it's the one I'm going to spend the most time on. It's extrovert versus introvert. We hear about and think about extrovert. We think about a loud, boisterous person coming in, being the center of attention in terms of a large group of people. All right, that's the extrovert that we think about. Introverts, we think about the bookworm who's sitting on the couch, who's staying in on a Friday, Saturday night, and just wants to have a quiet night in. There are stereotypes for a reason, but not necessarily the case on what an introvert or an extrovert may be. Extroverts tend to like to work out with other people. They tend to be able to gain some excitement and some energy and recharge from being with those people. Not necessarily large groups of people, but just people in general. Having those interactions allows them to get energized. Whereas introverts like to self-reflect. That's where they get recharged. They need to self-reflect, be on their own, and be able to recharge in that way. So a lot of introverts like to work out alone. Now, does that mean that you're an introvert versus an extrovert? No, we are a mixture of all the different 8 traits that the Myer Briggs indicator type shows us. But how much are we? Are we 60%, 40% extrovert, introvert? Are we 80%, 20% introvert, extrovert? What does that look like exactly? And so because we're a mixture of all of these traits, we need to understand that, yes, we need social interaction with large groups of people. We need small interactions with smaller groups of people. We need alone time that we can self-reflect at the same time. All of us need all of those things, and that's something to be very cognizant of. Now, just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you should avoid all external activity. All right? I am an introvert, by far. On a personal note, I am definitely an introvert. I am very self-reflective. Most of my time that I enjoy to re-energize is normally alone. I'm going to tell you a story. So I am an introvert, and throughout college, throughout high school, even after college, most of my training was done alone. Running, cycling, swimming. Throughout college especially, and after college, I was training somewhere between 18 and 25 hours a week. And so a lot of time was spent in my own mind, closing my eyes, getting through my workout, and I loved it. I enjoyed it. I got re-energized every day from it. I looked forward to it, and I really just pushed and drived that type of lifestyle. Now, there were times, I trained up in Lake George, New York, and there were times where most of the time I was living alone. And I started craving human interaction. I started getting antsy and a little bit of anxiety because I didn't have as much interaction as I probably should have had. And so while it played to my general lifestyle and my general personality, I still was neglecting the other side of that extrovertedness that I need as well. Fast forward, and many years later, I started up Confluence Running with the original owner, Ian Golden. And from there, the shop needed lots of group runs and needed lots of interaction with other businesses and other partnerships and gyms and getting out in the trails with people and interacting with customers and doing special events. All of these things needed interaction with lots of people. And for the first couple years, I thrived on it because it was something I hadn't really done that much of before. I'd never really dived into massive amounts of interaction, and so it was novel to me. At that point, I started finding myself having higher bits of anxiety. I started finding myself really struggling to get out and get through the day. And what I found after doing much research on Myer Briggs is that because I'm such a hard introvert, is that I never gave myself any time to self-reflect. I never gave myself any time to do a run on my own, a ride on my own, a swim on my own, a strength workout. Every single thing that I did was with people. I worked at the university. I did fitness classes at the university. It was always with people. I always the center of attention. I always was looked at as the leader. And so that took quite a bit of toll on me because I didn't have that time to be able to step back and say, okay, let me look around and see what's going on in my environment. And so I learned very quickly that I need that and I crave that. That's where my base personality, my base comfort level and comfort circle are, is that in that introvert place. And so I neglected that. And so many, many years went by and I pushed myself into the ground because I didn't understand that, yes, I'm an introvert and I needed to take a step back and allow myself to have that time maybe on a weekly basis or a daily basis. And so after the years went on, I've learned that and I've had to step back and I take my time to do that. I take my dog out for a run through the trails, put on my headphones, and I say, you know what, I'm doing this on my own today. I need that for myself. I have to take the time for myself. And it's an okay thing to say, all right? Whereas extroverts, the opposite is true. Extroverts, if they do a lot of introversion type activities, they have to say, I'm doing this for myself. I need to interact with people. I need that human interaction. And so we have to be honest with ourselves on how much introversion and extroversion we have and we need in order to have a healthy, balanced lifestyle. So that's the first set of traits with the Myers-Briggs indicator profiles. The second set of traits, you have sensing versus intuitive, S versus N. Sensing types, these are the detailed oriented people. All right, these are the people that walk into a location and can tell you someone's name, can tell you what color shirt that they were wearing, can tell you what color the walls were. All right, these are the very detail-oriented people. Intuitive people, Ns, these are more of the pattern-oriented people. They can walk in and they can look at patterns and say, okay, I know why they set up the room this way. They may not know exactly where it was all set up or visualize it in their head, but they can tell the pattern and the dynamic of what's going on in their environment. All right, they don't have as many of the detail-oriented places for them. Now, what's the difference here in terms of fitness? Detail-oriented people are much easier, they have a much easier time creating workouts, being able to write down specific details, being able to remember saying, okay, this drill, this workout, this is for this is for this, and they're able to write it all down and remember all those details. Pattern-oriented people have a much better time looking at the macro cycles, looking at the bird's eye view of a training cycle and saying, from now until 6 months from now, what is my training going to look like? How am I going to place on paper from the base period to the build period through different workouts, whether I'm increasing volume, increasing intensity, increasing speed work or hill work, where are all those things going to be placed? All right, so detail or pattern-oriented people, intuitive type people, are much better apt to be able to create long-term training plans rather than the specific details on a day-to-day basis. You need to know who you are. Are you an intuitive type? Are you a sensing type? Myself, I'm an intuitive type. So I enjoy and I like sitting down and being able to create the bird's eye view, create the 6-month, 12-month training plan and say, okay, this is my plan. I get excited about that. I'm not a sensing person. For anybody who knows me, I am not a sensing person. I'm not a detail-oriented person. I've had to train myself, especially in emergency management, had to train myself walking into a room and saying, where's the emergency exits? Where are the AEDs? Where are the fire extinguishers? All of those things I've had to train myself into with a lot of work. I'm not a detail-oriented person. So how do you battle something like that where your comfort zone is something that's intuitive, where you're able to look at patterns and see the bird's eye view, but know that you're not as strong with the details? You need to surround yourself with more detail-oriented people. If you can surround yourself with detail-oriented people, they're going to help you with looking over what's going on. On the flip side, if you are a detail-oriented person and don't have as much of the pattern side, of the macro side of the visions, then you need to be able to work with someone who has those visions to create plans. All right, so that's the balance there. You need to understand who you are and fill in those gaps around you that you may need. Like I said, you're a mixture of everything. You have a little bit of sensing, a little bit of intuitive. Which one is a little bit heavier than the other? The third trait. The third trait is thinking versus feeling. Thinking types tend to be a little bit more logical, tend to be a little bit more fact-based, saying, if then this, then this. That's a logical thinking type, T versus F. So those are the T's. The F's, on the other hand, the F's tend to do things more by gut instinct. So they make their decisions based on gut instinct and how they feel rather than by facts. So feeling types say, okay, I don't feel like this is right. All right, they may not have the facts in front of them, but that's what they feel and that's what they're going to go on. And that's okay. Either side is okay. And there's definitely a place for both of them. And there's a need for both of them. You have to understand who you are and how you interact with the world, how you make your own decisions. Are you more of a thinking type? Are you more of a feeling type? I'll give you some stories, some research. Males in the United States tend to be more thinking types, where females tend to be more feeling types. So males, because they are more thinking types, they tend to overtrain. They tend to push themselves past their limits. They don't listen to their bodies that well. And so they get more injured more frequently. They go into overtraining stage 2 more frequently. It's something that we don't want to do. On the other hand, we have females who are more feeling types in the United States. Feeling types tend to undertrain. They don't tend to push themselves to their limits. They have to learn how to push themselves to their limits. So these people need to understand that they can push themselves a little bit harder. So understanding that, we can understand that if you're a thinking type, sometimes you need to take a step back and say, is this actually good for me? Am I pushing myself too far past my limits? On the other hand, if you're a feeling type, you need to understand, you know what, I could probably push a little bit more. So understanding your base characteristics allows you to have those decisions and take a step back and say, okay, which direction do I need to go? A great story was in my intermediate swim class in the fall of 2019. It was great. I have all my students in the beginning of the semester. I say, okay, all the most proficient swimmer go towards the west wall. The least proficient swimmer, you go towards the east wall. Everyone else, fill in between, talk to each other about your swimming abilities, and sort yourselves out. That way I can take each one of them and place them into proper lanes, and that way they can swim with their ability levels. Well, I did lanes 3 and 4, which are the most proficient swimmers, did lanes 2 and 5, the next kind of middle proficient swimmers, and then lanes 1 and 6. Lane 1 are the least proficient swimmers, whereas lane 6 are the step up from the least proficient swimmers. They're in the outside lane so they can use the walls. Well, it turned out that there were 5 guys in lane 6 and 5 girls in lane 1. Typically, the lifeguard sits at lane 1 because those are the least proficient swimmers, and so they're the most likely that will need help in case of an emergency. After seeing them for a day swim, I moved the lifeguard from lane 1 over to lane 6 instead, because the guys overestimated their ability levels, the girls underestimated their ability levels. It was a perfect indication of how this plays out in the real world. So understand what your general tendencies and preferences are. It's not an end-all be-all. I want to reiterate that over and over again. It's not an end-all be-all saying this is who you are. These are your general tendencies. All right, where are your general tendencies and how are you going to move and interact with your environment knowing those general tendencies? The fourth set of traits, you have judging versus perceiving. Judging types. Judging types like to have things closed. They like to finish projects, they like to check off their lists and make sure that everything is just done and over with. On the other hand, perceiving types like to keep their options open. They don't like to be stuck to one specific plan. This is one set of traits that you need to really think about. Because on one hand, you need a plan. Everyone needs a plan. For motivation purposes, as human beings, we need a plan to be able to motivate ourselves from one day to the next. Without that plan, you're not going to get there. Now, perceiving types don't like this. It makes them very anxious. They need a backup plan. They need to keep their options open. And so what I'd like to say is you have to make a plan, but not be made by that plan. Plans are living. You create a 6-month plan from now until September. Your plan is going to live. Your plan is going to change on a week-to-week and a month-to-month basis. How are you feeling? What are your injuries like? How much progression are you gaining? All right. If your plan was you want to lose 10 pounds in 6 months and you lose it in the first month, well, your plan is now changed. Let's reevaluate it. And so you need to make up these backup plans. So if you're a judging type, by all means, make a plan. But you also need to understand you need to make a backup plan saying, if this doesn't work or if this is where I am in the future, what's the alternate route that I'm going to take? Perceiving types. It makes you really anxious to make a plan and be stuck by that plan. Make those backup plans. But you need that plan for motivation. You need that plan to be able to guide you from point A to point B to get you through that vision and get you through that goal. That's the last set of traits. So that's the Myer Briggs indicator type. I want you all to understand, I can't stress this enough, that your indicator type is not your personality. It's not who you are. It's your general tendencies. It's your general gut feeling of what makes you comfortable and where is your comfort zone. And you have to understand that, yes, you do want to push outside of your comfort zone. I'm an introvert. I get into a lot of extroverted situations. But I also need to understand I need to go into my comfort zone for me every once in a while. So that's what I want to impress upon you. Understand what your own personality profile is. Understand your general tendencies, where your comfort zone is. Strive to push yourself outside of your comfort zone so you can grow as a human being and a person in the community. But also understand that you need to give yourself some comfort and some security being able to go into your comfort zone when you need to. So that's a little bit on personality profiles. If you have any questions, please email me. All right, please comment on this video, and I'll try to answer as best as I can.